does not give up. Any other world leader, any other politician would have left the stage long ago. To a certain extent, he was humiliated in that he had to leave the prime minister's office, the prime minister's residence, but he keeps on fighting and he doesn't give up. So many will say, the focus is always on him and he's not thinking of the good of the country. But he is so determined and so focused and so motivated that he will look for a way, like when he was prime minister. It doesn't matter who he has to sit with and what he does, and I don't think he would have a problem sitting with Mansour Abbas's party because he actually was negotiating with him the last time around. So, it was definitely a watershed moment.
Right.
Again, it's not his politics, it's more his personality, and that people who have worked with him, including Bennett, including Gideon Saar, including Lieberman,
right,
all represent, including Benny Gantz, have all represent parties of people who've actually worked with him, either as his deputies, as his political partners. Yair Lapid was in a government with him and was finance minister.
Yeah.
They just will not work with him again, and that is going to be a real problem because they don't believe that he's going to, keep to his commitment. Mm-hmm. So that will be a problem. He will probably have a very good electoral showing. The question is how is he going to put together a government? And the higher he gets in the polls,
right,
the more the other parties will be motivated to be against him.
Okay, Khalid Joshan, let's listen to the United Nations Special Coordinator for Middle East Peace, for the Middle East Peace process, talking about Israel's settlement policies. Let's listen, and then I have a question on that.
Israeli settlement expansion on the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem, remains deeply troubling. Settlement constitute a flagrant violation of United Nations resolution and international law. Mounting violence has been fueled by exacerbated by provocative steps and inflammatory rhetorics. It is crucial that all parties take immediate steps to lower tension and reverse negative trends that undermine prospects for a peaceful two-state resolution of the conflict with a continuous, independent, viable and sovereign Palestinian state.
So, Khalil, do you see any of this feature in the campaigning and the debates before the next election? Do you see any of this changing under a new government?
I wish so, but I don't think so. Practically speaking, you'll have to be stupid to anticipate that all of a sudden the Palestine issue in 2022, October or November, is going to return as a serious campaign issue. I think Israel is way beyond that. What has happened in Israel is there is no diversity anymore. There is no diversity with regards to elections. There is no diversity with regards to governing. What you have in Israel is homogeneity gone berserk. And what you have, yes, a coalition government, but it seems to me if there is any lesson to learn from this past year in terms of governing in Israel is that coalition governing is no longer useful in Israel. It has served Israel probably well for several decades, but not any longer because, frankly, you do not have that diversity. You do not have left versus right. The left has totally disintegrated. Mm-hmm. What you have is essentially a right-wing society with few minor partners that it needs to kind of exist for, few months or a year or two to survive and pretend to be governing. So coalition governing is no longer the name of the game in Israeli politics. I as a person who grew up in that society, I can tell you it's no longer the same concept that we witnessed in the 50s and 60s, even though there were some ideological differences more pronounced than today. But the country was not of the same political color as it is today.
Sarah, what do you make of Khalil's point there that when it comes to the Palestinians, or indeed when it comes to other parts of Israeli policy, especially foreign policy, that there is no diversity in Israel?
I think there is diversity in Israel. It's just very hard to have that represented in the parliamentary process, which is a very messy and difficult arrangement, especially with a threshold of 3.25%. There are many parties that run for Knesset that represent a wide range of ideological viewpoints that just don't manage to get over the threshold. I think that there's also an issue today in Israeli society in terms of access to media. One of the questions of Benjamin Netanyahu's corruption trial is the way that he tried to manipulate the voice of the media to represent a specific point of view. And there has been a change in voting patterns. I mean, the way Israel votes is what it wants to see in the world. But I don't think that that's necessarily representative of the fact that they don't necessarily want to have peace with the Palestinians, that they don't want to have separation to regional partners.
And if you don't mind,
yeah, sure.
Something here.
Sure.
Okay. All right, Ruth, thank you. We have run out of time. Thanks to everyone for being on the show. That is it for this edition of The Heat. I'm Anand Naidu in Washington, D.C.
Would you like to receive the latest news updates about China and the rest of the globe? Tune in to the Beijing Hour every weekday for the latest in politics, business, sports, and entertainment from a Chinese perspective. Subscribe to the Beijing Hour for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
We all enter this world with a universal greeting. We then learn to speak.
Bonjour, comment allez-vous?
Though our languages, cultures, and traditions may differ, we still share one thing in common. We have hope for humanity and the world.
German Railway Company Deutsche
Director of the International
26th United Nations Climate.
Hear the difference with CGTN Radio. Join our global network to connect with the world.
CGTN Radio. Hear the difference.
So learning Chinese, the most difficult thing.
So I'm sort of tone deaf. I can't really hear them.
I think the cultural mindset is the biggest complication for
Grammar.
Takeaway Chinese, where you can take some Chinese away and experience progress day by day. Online, on air, and on your phone. Take today wherever you go and stay ahead of what's changing our world. From politics and the economy to business and technology. Today covers regional and international issues that affect China and the world. Keep up to date with Today. A roundup of the main business news from China and elsewhere. This is Global Business.
Welcome to Global Business here on CGTN in Shanghai, Beijing. Coming up, in a special coverage on the 25th anniversary of Hong Kong's return to the motherland, we look at Hong Kong's status as an international financial center. China has been stepping up efforts to promote the healthy development of a platform economy. G7 leaders pledged steps to tackle hunger globally and agreed to put more pressure on Russia by capping its oil prices. Now we continue the special coverage on the 25th anniversary of Hong Kong's return to the motherland. Our Michael Wong is in Hong Kong to help us better understand what the future holds for the super connector between the Chinese mainland and the world. Hi there, Michael. Over to you.
Hi there, Michelle. Indeed, we are here in Hong Kong, counting down to the 25th anniversary of Hong Kong's return to the motherland on July the 1st. Now, all week we have been speaking to a number of top business leaders here in Hong Kong, to financial institutions, and to students as well, to gauge the achievements of Hong Kong in these past 25 years and to gauge what the future holds for this Pearl of the Orient. Now, the general sense that I'm getting, speaking to both industry leaders and to the younger generation of Hong Kong, is that despite the uncertainties that we see right now from the pandemic, from the global slowdown in the economy, the long-term structural drivers that will underpin Hong Kong's economic development and going forward, a strong growth, is indeed quite robust. Now, it's very loud and clear here. The key message in terms of what's going to underpin that growth, it's going to be the continued and sustained development of the Chinese mainland economy. That's what's going to propel Hong Kong even more going forward. And as we see Hong Kong integrating itself more overall into the country's development strategies, the city is extremely well positioned to capitalize on the opportunities presented to it in the national 14th five-year plan and beyond. And all week, of course, we've been exploring Hong Kong's status as one of the preeminent international financial centers in the world. Taking a look back at these 25 years, of course, Hong Kong's financial services industry thriving under the one country, two systems principle. Its financial services industry, its contribution to the city's economy more than doubling since 1997. And of course, one of the key characteristics, I would say one of the defining characteristics of Hong Kong as an international financial center is its status as the premier offshore RMB hub for the world. And as we see the Chinese mainland economy continuing to develop, continuing to open up, Hong Kong's unique status as that gateway connecting global capital to the increasing demand for RMB-denominated assets, that's going to present tremendous opportunities for Hong Kong. Take a look.
China's long-term economic growth prospects are propelling increasing global demand for the country's currency, the renminbi. As the world's undisputed leader in offshore RMB, Hong Kong is poised to play an indispensable role in meeting the rising international demand for the Chinese currency.
In terms of renminbi, Hong Kong does have it is the most natural position to play that role, whether it's deepening our different types of products that are available, or whether it's through the various diverse financial services that can be provided.
Hong Kong has the world's largest and deepest pool of RMB beside the Chinese mainland. As of June this year, RMB deposits in Hong Kong have exceeded 800 billion, forming the bedrock of liquidity support for offshore transactions in the Chinese currency. The city is also home to the world's largest RMB interest rate derivatives market. China's 14th five-year plan offers clear positioning for the future of Hong Kong. One objective is not just to consolidate, but to strengthen and enhance Hong Kong's status as the world's top offshore RMB hub.
China is the world's largest trading nation. That means increasingly businesses around the globe are using the Chinese currency to settle their transactions. According to SWIFT, over 70% of the world's RMB payments are settled through Hong Kong.
On the investment front, 60% of foreign direct investment to the mainland flows through Hong Kong. Vice versa, around 60% of overseas investments made by mainland companies are channeled through Hong Kong.
So Hong Kong has about 800 billion deposits in Thin Edge, which is the biggest all over the world. It lays a good foundation for the market to develop the RMB products. And second is that Hong Kong has extensive experience in designing products denominated in US dollar and Hong Kong dollar. This experience will enable the market, because now we have the stock fund investor joining us. These investors are seeking for yield, and these needs will push the market to generate ideas to serve their needs. So I'm very confident that more and more innovative products in denominated RMB will come in the market.
With the continued inclusion of Chinese equities and bonds into major global indices, the RMB being a stable currency and increasingly used as a global reserve currency, plus a relatively lower correlation of RMB assets with other global asset classes, investors are increasingly diversifying into RMB-denominated financial products. With such a unique scope and capacity in dealing with RMB transactions, Hong Kong stands at the forefront of developing innovative RMB assets.
Right, so being the top offshore RMB hub, definitely giving Hong Kong a special edge as an international financial center, as it is not only the world's top offshore RMB hub, but also the top U.S. dollar funding center right here in Asia. But I would say, looking forward in terms of what's going to increase that status as an offshore RMB hub, three growth drivers, I think, these three key growth engines. One is green finance, fintech, as well as wealth management as well. These three factors are going to even drive Hong Kong's offshore status as an RMB hub even stronger. Green finance, for example, last year we saw the Shenzhen Municipal People's Government issue issuing its very first green bond denominated in the RMB in Hong Kong. I believe that is going to be the start of a trend where we're going to see more mainland cities and more local governments on the mainland coming to Hong Kong to issue RMB-denominated green bonds. Of course, Hong Kong also planning to become a regional and global leader when it comes to green finance. Fintech, I mean, Hong Kong is definitely on the path towards becoming an innovation powerhouse as well. We are already seeing the People's Bank of China and the Hong Kong Monetary Authority testing out the e-Chinese yuan. So this is the mainland's central bank digital currency here in Hong Kong, and that's going to have some very strong ramifications when it comes to cross-border payments as well. And of course, wealth management. We have the Wealth Management Connect pilot scheme that we see in the Greater Bay Area. We should be seeing more portfolio flows of the renminbi coming into Hong Kong's already very strong status as an international asset management center. So I mentioned earlier that about 60% or over 60% of foreign direct investment going into the Chinese mainland flows through Hong Kong. I also spoke with Stephen Phillips, who is the Director General for Investment Promotion at Invest Hong Kong, which is a department of the SAR government responsible for attracting FDI into the city, for his take in terms of why Hong Kong is such an attractive destination for foreign direct investment. Take a listen.
Let's take the geographic one first. So Hong Kong as a market in its own right, obviously a mature, sophisticated economy, and with opportunities both on the consumer side and the B2B side. But then you've got the scale of the bigger opportunity in the Greater Bay Area, which is very exciting for the companies I talk to around the world. It's the scale and depth of the opportunity. But of course, some companies use Hong Kong for other parts of the mainland. That can be Yangtze River Delta, JJJ, Chengdu, Chongqing, or even beyond that. But Hong Kong also, for many of the companies that we work with, are also covering ASEAN from Hong Kong as part of their regional Asian operations. And for some companies, Belt and Road is also an opportunity that they can leverage from here in Hong Kong. So it's a very, very big geographic landscape. If we look at the sector side, at Invest Hong Kong, we look at it through three broad clusters. We have a lifestyle and creative cluster, so looking at the opportunities in consumer products, creative industries, tourism and hospitality, food and drink, food tech. So it's very broad, both sectorally and even broader geographically.
And Stephen, of course, we saw some social unrest in Hong Kong in the past 2 to 3 years, but right now, of course, the city is very stable, solid foundation in terms of prospering for the future. What are you hearing from overseas chambers of commerce in terms of the business environment, the environment for investment here in Hong Kong?
I'd say Hong Kong is as easy as anywhere. Setting up a company in Hong Kong, very, very straightforward. You don't have to have local directors. You've got the freedom to tailor the business to the needs of the overseas headquarters. So we're amongst the best in the world. In some quarters around the world, people are questioning what is the role of Hong Kong in the context of the country. And I think the 14th five-year plan makes it crystal clear that Hong Kong continues to have a really important role to play in the country. It talks about the 4 traditional sectors in Hong Kong and the 4 emerging sectors, all of which are relevant to business. Hong Kong can add value to the overall development of the country going forward.
And of course, Hong Kong is the largest offshore RMB hub, and I'm wondering what that means, the implications for that in terms of driving foreign direct investment into the Chinese mainland.
Well, I think if I look at it from the perspective of an international investor, Hong Kong is a really interesting market, but in the overall scheme of things, Hong Kong is quite small. But you scale it up, as you say, to GBA, and that's a market that gets attention. Scale, breadth, depth, and the high growth potential interest for FDI. And I think the crucial thing is as well, this isn't about Hong Kong versus one of the other 10 cities comprising GBA. It's about how do you leverage Hong Kong plus Zhongshan, say, or it could be Shenzhen plus Zhongshan, the international city within GBA. So that makes it much easier for most international companies to land here. The benefits of Hong Kong really becoming this international innovation and technology hub within the context of the whole of the country is really the direction that we need to go. And there are things that are sort of mutually supporting. So having an operation here in Hong Kong to then tap into the wider country, important, the wider region, important. And it's also very closely related to the fundamental research that goes on in the universities. So it's really the commercialization of that research, the spin-outs, and how you blend that with international talent, with the capital, and with the scale of the proximate markets that is the recipe for the future growth. At the highest level, the 14th five-year plan actually sets that big picture agenda. But then what we're doing within government is in every sector of the economy constantly looking to make the policy environment, the funding environment, the support environment as conducive as possible to help businesses wherever they're from to flourish. And that includes FDI.
Now, according to the latest World Investment Report, the Hong Kong SAR ranks third globally when it comes to attracting foreign direct investment. And also, according to a joint survey by Invest Hong Kong and the city's Census and Statistics Department, the number of businesses here in Hong Kong with parent companies outside of Hong Kong and the number of startups in this city all reached a record high in 2021. So despite the narratives that you might hear outside of China questioning the status of Hong Kong as an international city for business, commerce, trade, and finance, etc., businesses in reality are actually voting with their feet to stay here in Hong Kong as they see those long-term growth drivers propelling the SAR's growth and development forward. They see the regional dynamics in terms of how powerful this region can be when it comes to growth and development. And of course, they are definitely staying here, setting up in Hong Kong as a base to take advantage of the market access for the Chinese mainland economy as well. So Michelle, that's going to be all from my end for now. I'm going to hand it back to you, and make sure to stay tuned to CGTN as we continue our coverage of the 25th anniversary of Hong Kong's return to China. But for now, it's back to you in Beijing, and I'm going to go enjoy the wonderful views behind me. Michelle?
Yeah, thank you so much, Michael. Great insights into Hong Kong as a global financial hub, and looking forward to more reports from you in the coming days. Have fun there. China's foreign trade has been showing steady recovery in the second quarter of the year, with higher profits from exports for most industries, especially for high value-added firms. That's according to a report from the China Council for the Promotion of International Trade. The report points to ample momentum in industries such as mining, ferrous metals, and special equipment manufacturing. The CCPIT says that nearly 56% of the companies feel that faster export tax rebates is the most helpful way to ease their cash flow pressures. Meanwhile, nearly 54% of the companies say they plan to utilize the RCEP. That is nearly 2.2 percentage points higher than the previous quarter. China's Ministry of Industry and Information Technology says that the automobile industry supply chain and vehicle production have returned to normal levels after the pandemic. Data shows that from June 1st to June 26th, the 15 main automobile firms in the country produced 1.7 million vehicles, up 16% on a yearly basis and 48% over the same period in May. The ministry says that China will continue to improve its production and supply capacity to ensure smooth operation of the automobile industry. Recently, the Chinese government signaled a shift in its attitude toward digital platforms, from tightening oversight to encouraging healthy growth. Policy support was stressed in the latest State Council guideline on how to stabilize the economy. The State Council says it's necessary to promote fair competition and healthy growth of the platform economy through normalized regulation. This will help digital platforms to create more jobs and stimulate the growth of related small businesses. The State Council says steps should also be aimed at encouraging platforms to innovate in areas such as artificial intelligence, cloud computing, and blockchain. Live streaming is changing the way farmers sell their produce, and it's raising their income too. A township enterprise in northeastern Liaoning province, in particular, has increased sales, prompting other small local businesses to follow suit. Yu Li has the story.
Sun Chengli does live streaming on Douyin, China's domestic version of TikTok, selling grains produced by her own family. The boss is her father-in-law.
对，这边的货这都是那个京东仓库的，都是京东的。对，外头的是咱们。外头那边呢是这边这是直播的货。
Li's company has a complete industrial chain with more than 860 hectares of arable land, a processing plant,
也可以上来。
a packaging workshop, and sales channels. The live streaming sales channel just started about a year ago.
When the account first opened, we didn't have a single fan. It was just family members who watched and liked it. In nearly a year, our sales reached 10 million yuan and our fans reached over 310,000.
Li may be a beginner in live streaming, but his company has made the most of e-commerce.
后来从2010年开始，我们就尝试着去做。
We've been doing e-commerce since 2010. At the beginning, we sold about 10 tons a year. Last year, we sold nearly 3,000 tons. We expect to sell 5,000 tons this year. E-commerce currently accounts for 60 to 70% of the company's overall processing and sales business.
Seeing the potential and low barriers to entry of live streaming, the local government hopes to promote this sales model for smaller companies.
现在啊，就电商这块啊，主要就以这个3家大企业。
Large e-commerce platforms such as JD.com, Tmall, and Taobao require operational teams and funds, which small companies can't afford. To encourage them to open sales channels, we established an e-commerce base for agricultural products last year. After some training, small merchants can also do live streaming on platforms such as Douyin and Kuaishou.
The company now has 5 live streaming anchors and plans to train more people and open several more accounts.
These anchors were originally farmers, and they gradually became skilled at live streaming even without special training.
Li hopes the company's sales this year will reach 100 million yuan, and he's very optimistic about it. Yu Li, CGTN, Chaoyang, Liaoning Province.
Now, for more discussions on China's platform economy, we're joined by Liu Zhiqin, Senior Fellow at Chongyang Institute for Financial Studies at Renmin University of China. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Liu. So, since March this year, many policies have been unveiled to support the platform economy. What are the reasons for the same?
I believe 2 major reasons should be noted. One is that the pandemic outbreak in China. At the early of this year, that the pandemic new cases came out in some countries, some areas, especially in some production regions, Shanghai and the major cities. That caused a big disorder and problems in China's economic development, especially for platform. The economy has been really influenced. And the second is the geopolitical uncertainty in Europe. So all these 2 factors has caused the supply chain disrupted. So that's why this information and the situation has really seriously impacted the platform economy. That's why we need more supportive and positive policies to support the platform economy in China. All these companies should be encouraged and promoted to expand their business opportunities and potentialities. So in doing so that we can have more chances and opportunities to get real connected with the international market. So these 2 factors are the main reason that why we have so positive and supportive policies worked out in the recent months.
Mm-hmm. Now, Mr. Liu, let's elaborate on this a little bit. So what's the role of platform economy in stabilizing employment and the Chinese economy, especially during and after the pandemic? And how important is the platform economy in optimizing resource allocation, promoting industrial upgrading and expanding consumer markets, and also promoting social development?
Definitely, we can see that it's so important that the platform economy in China, especially in the past 2 decades, that the platform economy played an essential role to promote China's development. Without the platform, that I think our infrastructure project and the financial reform cannot be further developed smoothly. So we can see that the platform economy has really a greater potential to enlarge, to strengthen the employment, also to optimizing and also maximizing all these opportunities of innovations and new technologies. And especially the features of the platform economy has 2 important factors. First is the mobility. Secondly is flexibility. Both flexibility and mobility help the platform economy that play even greater role, because it's a platform to connect all industry sections, for instance, the manufacturing, high-tech, and the supply side and the demand side. So this platform is so importantly and played a key role in China's economic development. That's why China's modernized and also industrialized and urbanization, all these 3 factors are really greatly impacted by the platform economy. So we hope that the platform economy will have a better and healthy and sustainable condition to further develop, to support our China's economy in the right direction.
All right, thank you so much for your insights. Liu Zhiqin, Senior Fellow at Chongyang Institute for Financial Studies at Renmin University of China. The Ministry of Culture and Tourism has said China has taken many measures to promote the recovery of the cultural and tourism industry. Those measures included increasing financial policy support, promoting the recovery of the consumer market, and strengthening assistance services for those enterprises hit hard by the pandemic. The G7 leaders have pledged funding to tackle world hunger and have agreed to put more pressure on Russia. The latest proposal is a price cap on Russian oil, which is already subject to Western sanctions and a European embargo. But few details have been released about the plan. And Bavaria.
G7 leaders have wrapped up this 3-day summit in Bavaria, which was largely dominated by the conflict in Ukraine and many of the knock-on effects of that conflict, such as the spiraling costs of food and energy, which we've seen go up around the world. Those G7 leaders pledging an additional $4.5 billion to support global food insecurity, and again, really trying to showcase and take a position of unity, a united stance against Moscow in this conflict. And here's what German Chancellor Olaf Scholz had to say.
We will continue to sustain and drive up the economic and political costs of this war for President Putin and his regime. To that end, it is important to stand